episode 215 of the Downward Facing Spiritual Spiral podcast. Thrilled you're here today. This will be a pretty quick intro, only because my cats are running around the house, and one of them just walked in, and I told you, I get the sense it's going to be a little loud and crazy in here, so I'm going to get to the intro, get through this as quickly as I can. You know I'm Eddie Cohn, host. Come on, Leo, stop it. Stop. He's going crazy. Very professional here. My cat is taking over the show, Leo. Yeah, I'm Eddie, host, producer of the show. Thrilled you're here. Leo's excited you're here too. God, he's very vocal today. I can just tell. He's just in one of his moods. If you enjoy the show, if you enjoy listening to a old man talking to his cat, head over to iTunes, write a review, share this show with your friends. It's a great talk. I welcome my friend I've known for probably about 25 years now, Evan Beigel, to the show. It's his second time on the show. Our first talk was actually one of the most downloaded episodes. And I think it's because we have this way of listening and thinking and contemplating some very challenging topics. We did that on the first episode, and we do it again today. This time touching a bit on artistry, creativity, and we both I just finished Stranger Things. I think when he and I spoke, we were both sort of in the middle of the fourth season, but we talk about violence in film, society, and how violence may or may not affect children. We talk about parenting. Evan's a father of 2 boys. And I also like the way that he listens. It's interesting. I don't know. Are you aware of people in your life where you talk to them and can you tell when people aren't listening? Is it something that you're aware of? It's sort of one of the themes of many of my show, where I talk about the effects of technology and social media, and I think we're all being tricked into thinking that it's just this beautiful, euphoric utopia that it's creating, and maybe it's actually creating more harm than good. I'm not sure. I just really I'll personalize it with a quick anecdote. I've been home all day playing the guitar, recording a new song, and I was so excited about it, I thought about posting a video about it on Instagram. And maybe because I was sort of in that headspace of thinking, oh, I did something, but to celebrate it, let's post it on social media. But I resisted. I didn't do it. And I think because there's some intimacy, there's some privacy, why do we need to post everything on social media? I'll leave you with that question. It's something that I really think a lot about. And I guess to my original point here with Evan, I think he's a great listener, and it made me think about the people in my life, the ones that know how to listen. It's something that I think about, and I was just curious if it's something that you're aware of. Do you talk even if somebody isn't listening, or do you sort of, become a bit quiet? Do you stop talking, or do you just not care whether somebody's listening or not? You're just blabbing away. Is listening not even important to you? I'll leave you with that deep question. You know where to find me on social, at Eddie Cohn or the Spiritual Spiral Podcast. You know about my new book. If you don't already, I have a new book that's out. It's on Amazon, SSAFY, or you can go to ssafyoga.com. All my music's on Spotify. Any questions, you know where to reach me, at Eddie Cohn. Thanks again, Evan, for taking the time to speak to me. We actually, oh my gosh, I'm so happy I remember this. I end today's show with a song that he and I recorded and produced probably almost 20 years ago. So get to end the show with that. It was really fun and exciting to listen to that song again. Gosh, I haven't listened to it for quite a while. So that's it. Evan, thanks so much for taking the time to be on the show. As always, thanks to you for listening, supporting, and being a part of the Downward Facing Spiritual Spiral podcast. You always have a low voice.
Blessed with a low voice.
Yeah, let me add a little EQ.
Are you sure the high end in your hearing is still intact?
Probably not. Look, I had to show you this. Look what I saw this in my closet about 3 weeks ago.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, right? Yeah, for many reasons, I think I've been really, I think might be closing in on 50. Been thinking a lot about, like, just getting older, and my time is limited, and like spending it as much as I can just doing things that I love. I've just picked up golf again. I know you used to play, or maybe you still do.
Oh, I do, man. We should play.
I'd love to. Yeah.
I'm going to Tucson next Saturday. I'll be there for a week, so maybe sometime after that.
Where do you play?
But I'll mostly up here, like close by where I live. But I'll go anywhere to play because I don't have any golf company. Like, I'm mostly out there by myself, which I don't like. I don't like playing golf by myself, but I'm just preparing for later in life when I really want to just spend a lot of time playing golf. So
Yeah.
I've been working really hard at it for the last, I don't know, I want to say like 18 months or so. Like, since mid-pandemic,
Yeah.
I decided that I was going to like take up golf again.
Yeah, it's similarly to you, but like over the last year and a half, I just started to play, and yeah, there's a lot of great courses out here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Fun.
we're very lucky, and Arizona, I played with my dad about 4 months ago. It was like $200 to play 18 holes, and here in LA, Rancho Park, you could play for $30-$40. It's crazy. So.
I'm down, man.
Yeah, no.
Like I said, I don't have any golf company, so you're the first person I've talked to that I know who actually plays.
Yeah, it's interesting playing by yourself because I go out and play I'll occasionally play with a friend of mine over at Shoal, but I do go out by myself, and it is amazing how your play. I'll speak for myself. My play and my experience is influenced by the people I play with. Like I about 2 months ago, I played with another group of three, and they were probably the worst golfers I've ever played with. And I literally walked off after 2 holes because I'm not great, but if you can't get to the green within 8 shots, I'll give you 1 or 2 holes. But I could tell all of them were just hacking away, and I just. I can't be playing with those types of people. Whereas,
Such a jerk, man. Oh
yeah,
my God.
I know. But a few days ago, I played with these guys, and one of them was probably a scratch golfer, and the other 2 were probably mid 80s. So they were better than me. But it does make you want to play better, and it makes the experience more fun.
Yeah, there's nothing more fun than playing with really good golfers, in my opinion. Yeah, the reason why I don't play golf with people is because I'm like you. I'm very picky about my golf company.
Yeah.
Very picky.
Yeah. If I were Joe Rogan, I wouldn't be thinking about this thought, and that is, you and I could talk. Like, I have an issue with Joe Rogan. My only issue is that 3 hours worth of podcasts. I don't think people listening. I don't think millions of people listening to 3 hours worth of a podcast 3 times a week is good for productivity in our culture. Like, he creates so many conversations that are so long, and very often they're literally shooting the shit about nothing. And I guess my point is that you and I could talk for 3-4 hours, and I could publish the podcast, but so much of it could be just we're talking about
golf,
about golf or movies.
Okay, we could change the subject.
No, like this is the problem. Like, I don't know if it's a problem. My brain really thinks about like releasing something into this world. Like, people can't sit still. They're doing 2 or 3 things at once. I feel like I have about an hour when it comes to a podcast. Even the songs that I write, they're like less than 3 minutes now. It's sort of like I don't know if it's appropriate, but I do feel like a lot of creators, like the executives at Netflix and Hulu, they're thinking, this show you're writing, it needs to be done in like 6 episodes, because people aren't willing to give it 10 episodes or even 18 episodes like they used to like 4 or 5 years ago. If you've noticed, like the content is just sort of like shrinking and shrinking. And I think it's because people think about the world.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about Stranger Things, and no spoilers because I haven't finished watching
Yeah, I
the
just
new
started watching it.
season. Yeah, I haven't finished, but I do know that the episodes are getting longer. And then I heard
Yes.
from somebody that like the last couple episodes are like really long, like an hour and a half, 2 hours long. And I'm thinking, oh, so they're taking down the number of episodes, but they're just making them longer now.
Hmm.
Like I don't know if that's good either, but we'll see. I haven't gotten to those episodes yet.
Yeah.
So I don't want to pass judgment too quickly. But that's one thing I noticed is that yeah, the episode counts are coming down, but they seem to be getting longer.
Let me ask you a question that I've just thought of. I literally just watched the first episode of this fourth season of Stranger Things. Is that where you're at?
I've watched more than one episode,
Okay.
but yeah,
But
but yeah, I'm in the fourth season.
so we did a focus group a few months ago. We were having a hard time recruiting kids that watch Stranger Things. Like the clients, I think I can't say who.
How old were you trying to
Well,
recruit?
here's the thing. They wanted 8, 9, 10, and 11 year olds. And I
So
was
my son, oh yeah,
Well,
go ahead.
here's my point. So I was really struck by that first episode and how brutal it was.
Yeah,
And so I know this can sound very nefarious and very evil and like malevolent, but the creators of that show for 3 seasons have created a very pretty family friendly show. And to me, so you've got kids that are hooked on this show because they've watched the first few seasons and they are dying to watch it. And then parents potentially are watching that first episode. And I do wonder if they're having conversations at home, arguments with their kids because their kids have loved this show. And then bam. And I was even reading some of the reviews of this season. They're saying that it's much more horrific and graphic than the other seasons. And I don't know if there's any, malintent or this nefarious intent from the Duffer Brothers or Netflix, but I just find it interesting that that's what I've seen.
yeah, no, there's no question that this season is another level up from the past few seasons. But there's no way that the first 3 seasons I would have shown to my 8 year old or my 9 year old or my 10 year old. My youngest son's 11 right now, and we finally convinced him to watch Stranger Things. So he's been binging the first 3 seasons, and he's on season 3 now. And I think he's pretty used to it. But yeah, I'm still thinking, when he watches that first episode of season 4, like, is he gonna like feel the same way about this? Like, are we gonna hear from him? Should we even let him?
Yeah.
But he's 11, so it's probably okay. But 8, 9, 10, no way. It's not. It's not for them. Not only that, I think the intent of Stranger Things, there is such a strong nostalgia factor to it, and the only way you're going to understand that is if you're an adult. So I still think that the conception of it was more for adults right from the get-go, even though it was a little more family friendly than like season 4, let's say.
Yeah. But let
I
me
still don't, but I still don't see an 8, 9, or 10 year old getting into even the first 3 seasons or understanding enough to care about it, or I don't know.
Yeah,
Hard
but
to
this
say.
is but when you sort of throw or thrust young, cute kids, and they're the main focus of the show, that instantly is going to create curiosity from children, I think, and they're going to think, oh, these kids are in middle school or high school. So I think
Yeah,
it's
you're
just,
right.
I
You're
think
probably right.
it's just, I think it's very precarious, and I don't know, Evan. I've been really thinking a lot about influence. And, my mom was very strict about me watching R-rated movies when I was 10 and 12 and 13, 14. And I kind of questioned it when I was a kid. But now I don't know how much you think about it, but it's just, I do think the exposure that kids have now, be it, unlimited porn on their phones, unlimited shows on Netflix and Hulu, and now they can say the F word, and the violence in film and television now is so exploitive. And I'm not anti Quentin Tarantino. He's an idol of mine. But I think this is a very, I think, challenging landscape for. I guess my point is it any one, the pie charts say that violence is because of, bad mental health, being bullied, easy access to guns. But it's interesting, and Bill Maher said this. It's like Hollywood doesn't want to talk about the influence that they potentially have, on our culture because of violence in film. It's something I think about.
Yeah. Yeah. As a parent, I think about it too. Yeah, I just don't know what degree of a role it actually plays in those areas in influencing children. Like, because my children, like, they have access to all that stuff. They're both, full access to the internet. They have their video games and they play those and they're violent. My son, older son, is pretty immune, I would say, to violence in shows. Like, he started watching Arrow like many seasons ago. He's 16 now, but this was probably back when he was 10 or 11. He started watching Arrow, and it was on TV. So Joelle and I didn't think anything of it. We just let him watch it. And then I was actually practicing yoga in the bedroom, and he was in the bedroom watching episode, and I was like finally getting exposed just to the sound of like what was going on this show, and I was like, man, this sounds like really violent. And I go like to watch, and sure enough, like it's like violent, and I wasn't expecting it, and I was like, this is TV.
Yeah.
It was like one of those moments where, because I had not watched all that much TV, like at that time, I was watching movies, but I wasn't like hooked on any shows or anything like that. Maybe I watched like a show on HBO, but I don't consider that to be regular TV. That's HBO, right?
Yeah.
So, but I was just surprised by the level of violence, and it didn't really seem to affect him. And I don't know if it was because he was used to it or not. So he doesn't have any, like, he's entertained by it, but he doesn't seem to be affected by it. And then over the years, I've shown him horror movies and things like that where I've thought they were intense, and he was like bored and wanted stuff that was more intense.
Yeah.
But then again, he's also a person that knows the difference between reality and television, and he knows it so deeply. And I don't know if it's because I don't know how. I would love to give ourselves credit, like as parents, but there's way more stimulus out there than just the parents. There's way more things that go into the wiring of a human being, and I don't know what they are. Like, I don't know like what the specifics are. I guess what I'm trying to say is he's exposed to all those things, and he loves paintball. Like, loves going out there and competing like on a paintball field, like hardcore paintball. But at no time would he like consider shooting up a school, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like robbing a liquor store, or getting into like serious trouble with the law, killing somebody, beating somebody up, all degrees of violence. In reality, there's just no way. So how these kids are wired, I think there is more that goes into it than we can possibly understand. And I think it's pretty fashionable to blame like TV shows, video games, other things like the internet for influencing a child to do something they wouldn't otherwise do. So I don't know where the line is, to be honest. I think it's important to make sure that your kids are exposed to like the realities of life.
Yeah.
Because you don't want them to not be street smart, and you want to protect them from things as well until they're ready. And I think it's about when they're ready to understand what these things are. Like, that's a really important distinction. So let's take like what's going on in Ukraine, for example. Like, how am I going to explain to my 11-year-old, or when this all started, I think he was had he turned 11 yet? Yeah, he was 11. I wasn't really sure how to explain to him like what was going on in Ukraine, which would just be based on my limited understanding
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah,
right? But
yeah.
how to have the conversation because he hears about it, but how do you have that conversation? Or like, you know, the office of the president and these polarizing conversations around the different presidents of the United States, like having those conversations with them. Just not sure because the context like isn't quite there. So how do you talk about that with somebody who doesn't have any context or understand? The risk is that they hear different things. They're watching YouTube, wherever they get their information. These polarizing opinions about this stuff through commercials and other messages that they're putting out, fully knowing that there's like young people watching this stuff.
Yeah.
And we'll get questions, and we're like, where'd you hear about that, or where'd you see that? Oh, I saw it on YouTube, and I was like, oh, what show were you watching on YouTube? And it's some like gamer or something, or or,
Right.
or some I can't remember the names, but some influencer, in the gaming world. And the commercials that show up are seemingly like not quite in context with like how to like excel at Minecraft. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like so they're pumping in this information, knowing who the audiences are. And these audiences don't have any context around what's happening. So they're formulating some sort of opinion or disposition on this information. And as parents, we're often taken by surprise at what we hear from our kids that they saw on YouTube, but they're coming at it from questions. Um, I know I'm getting off the topic or the question that you asked or what you
Yeah,
raised,
but
but
you,
it
sorry.
all goes back to. I'll just say this last point. It
Yeah.
all goes back to just how much of an influence, negative or positive, do these things have on our kids and influence their behavior? Um,
Yeah.
I just don't know how to answer it. Like I don't know. I just know that we're really lucky because we know that both of our kids are making really good decisions despite all this stuff. And like I said, while I'd love to give us credit as parents, there's got to be more to it than that
Well,
scientifically.
this is the point in connection with exactly what you just said. I think parents have, and I don't mean this in any slight to you, you're a great guy, and I'm sure you're a great parent, but I do think parents have less credit or can take less credit now than ever. And I think it's because kids' exposure, unless they're a Quaker or a Shaker or something, their exposure to so many different mediums and content is just gargantuan compared to when you and I were kids. I mean, it was very simple to like our parents had so much more control over the environment that we were raised in, and outside of really the only influence was our teachers and our kids at school and maybe after school band practice or wherever. It was such a small group of potentially toxic influence that could sort of corrupt our mind in some sort of way. And not to say that YouTube and all these things automatically corrupt, but you bring up a great point. I don't know.
Yeah, how do you explain then
Yeah.
how my two kids ended up like so far anyway in not just unbelievable shape intellectually, socially, academically, in every respect, essentially. Like, how did they end up that way despite our, what are the stimuli that contribute to their ability to make good decisions and when they don't understand something to come and ask, like what fosters that type of thinking?
Yeah, that's a
How
great,
did,
yeah.
yeah. So yeah, and again, I don't know what the answer is. We do the best we can as parents, but one thing you're factually correct about is that we have less control over the environment. No question about it. However, the difference that makes, don't know. Because if my kids are proof, our less control over the environment has actually played out pretty good for us. So I don't know what that is. And when it doesn't play out well for parents, kids, families, like what's the stimulus going on there? Like what's responsible for the wiring in those kids' minds and the decisions they're making? And I know I used a very, like the worst of the worst, like shooting up a school as an example. Like that's like one far end of the spectrum because it's very prevalent now in society. Like this is, I can't remember how many years ago Columbine was, but from that point forward, it has been this progression of more and more gun violence, right? In schools with young people, against kids, against innocents, like you name it. It's just been increasing, or I don't know if it's always been there and it's just is becoming more magnified. I don't know. But it seems like it's just been exponentially increasing over time. So the question that's like a one end of the spectrum. And then the other end is, a kid that goes out and is constantly getting into trouble with the law, but is not killing anybody. But what I'm saying is making bad decisions over and over again,
Yeah.
like making suboptimal decisions repeatedly, not learning from their mistakes. Maybe it's as simple as that. Maybe some kids' brains are wired to learn better from their mistakes than others. Like I have no idea. And maybe it really has nothing to do with the parents at all. In fact, the parents could be horrible people and the kid could decide, my parents are horrible people. I don't want to be like that. And they end up great because they go in a different direction because their influence is so bad. They want to like move
Yeah.
away from that. That's possible as well. So I don't know the answer.
I think so much of life and sort of the way it unfolds is really just luck and timing. I will say though, you did bring up a point that I think is important that I think now adults are having trouble with, and I think if parents, again, I'm speaking out of the clouds here since I don't have kids, but I think if kids are shown that there are consequences to their actions, be it good or bad, I think that's an incredibly important lesson. Like I don't know how one teaches that to kids. But even as adults, I think, and they may seem mysterious, but there are consequences as an adult if you are not eating well, if you sit on your ass and watch television. I mean, there are collective consequences, I believe, to all of our actions. I think we are all connected, and that's why I talk about the impact of tech. And, I may stay off my phone all day, but the guy driving next to me is so addicted to his phone that he's driving down the 405 and he's got to respond to the text while he's driving. I mean, I think and there are consequences to that behavior. I don't know. I think strangely, and I don't know if this is promulgated by like the news media or leaders or teachers or, parents are so busy, but it does feel like it's like people just want to do whatever they want. And I don't think that's a good behavior, be it kids or adults. And I think, I don't know, speaking to your kids, am I speaking out of my ass here? Or did you guys have a discussion about consequences? Is that,
Oh yeah, all the
yeah.
time.
I don't know. I think that's an important, I think that's one of the most
Well,
important.
it is, but I can't. It absolutely is, but I don't know if like so and so child who is having a really difficult time making bad decisions, getting in trouble, getting poor grades, not performing to their potential. Like, are those parents all not having those conversations with their kids? Like, is that the answer? Like, I doubt it. I tend to doubt it. So, but to answer your question, yeah, we of course have those conversations all the time. We don't reward bad behavior, we reward good behavior. It's hard for me to imagine that it's that binary, meaning for all those kids out there that are doing poorly than the average, that means that the parents on average are having less of those conversations. I'm not sure. Like I'm
Yeah.
not sure what the correlation is. And I don't know. We definitely have people we know with kids, and the kids are varying degrees of success in all those different areas that I mentioned. Um, and the parents in all cases seem like wonderful people.
Yeah.
And we observe the parents like not rewarding bad behavior and rewarding good behavior, when we're around to observe such a thing. But
Yeah.
we can't, as parents, we can't like judge.
Yeah.
It's like can't tell somebody how to raise their kid. I mean, it's like you're not in their environment or their world most of the time. So I don't know, man. It's a tricky one. I always get a little skeptical though when the immediate blame goes to access to content
Yeah.
because I don't know how much of that is a contributing factor or whether it's that plus a combination of other things. I
Yeah,
have
but
no
here's
idea.
okay. So last point in this area. This is why I have trouble with the entertainment industry, because they don't show consequences, like real consequences. If Keanu Reeves in some show is just like bulldozing and shooting 10, 15, 20 people, we don't see all the funerals. We don't see like their spouses crying. So often infidelity just like happens, like it's a joke in television and movies. I don't know. I think there is something here about how movies and television don't show the consequences of the onslaught of violence, and I don't know. I think it it's a completely because consequences, I guess, are boring to show. It's not sexy to watch consequences on a movie or television show. I don't know. I love the show Snowfall, but there is sort of like you see people getting blown to shreds, and you don't see like this kid's mom crying, and you don't see like the funeral, and it all just sort of happens, and we just sort of like move on. I don't know.
Right, but that's no different though than it's always been, right? It's entertainment.
Yeah,
Like
I guess you're
people are
right.
watching it for entertainment.
I
You know,
Yeah, I guess if the violence and the gore is getting worse, and it's getting worse and more graphic because like we're becoming immune, it's almost like we need that now to feel something because it needs to be pornographic in nature in this weird sort of way. I don't know. I don't have any explanation, of course, but I just think because real life has consequences and we don't see it in film or television. You're right. I guess we never did. So, but yeah, it's you talk about the distinction between real life and television. I think I'm a little more glass half empty because I do feel like if you live in the digital entertainment world, I just wonder if sort of that lifestyle ends up sort of seeping into your brain into sort of the analog lifestyle, and you don't know how to distinct the two or make the distinction.
yeah. I think where I disagree with that notion is just that as the catalyst for the bad, for not having. I don't think the distinction between real life and violence, for example, seen on television in shows, movies that are designed for entertainment, I don't think that's what causes a human being to lose sight of reality to the point where it influences a decision that would be deemed as bad for that reason. Like I don't see like the synergy between those concepts. What I do see synergy between is that if a child in their young age is either abused or mentally or physically, or if they are not given enough of meaningful attention from the individuals in their life that they're depending on at such a tender age, I think that, and I'm just hypothesizing, has immeasurable effects on the way the brain wires itself as it's maturing. And I think that, more than any piece of content, will lead to dysfunction at all levels than simply watching too many violent movies, TV shows, games, etc. I think there's something about the human interaction that causes that like wiring to go bad, so to speak. And again, we're talking about different degrees.
Yeah, of
Just
course.
kid who gets bad grades but is otherwise great, to kid who shoots up a school. You know what I mean? It's like it's
Yeah.
it's. I think it has more to do with that stuff, but I don't know for sure. Obviously I don't know.
To change the subject a bit, I also thought about you. Hey, Nellie. I thought about you because I remember when we started recording. First of all, just a little backstory. I was a pretty insecure, before I met you, I was a pretty insecure musician, singer-songwriter. Like I knew that I was creative. I started writing scripts. I played the piano when I was really young. Um, but I think having a pretty famous family member doing well in music, I kind of felt like, how do I, it just felt like music was something I should stay away from. So that's why I started doing film and television. Um, because there was the comparison, and I was even hard on myself. Um, but then there was like some people slowly in my life in college, and I was a late bloomer to sort of the structure of songwriting, who would say to me, you're a really good singer. And I had never heard that before. And I was really shy about my singing. I spoke to a friend of mine a few weeks ago who I knew in high school, and he came over to my house and I started playing the drums. And he's like, dude, why doesn't anybody at school know that you know how to play the drums? Or why? I started playing the piano and all this sort of stuff. And so Steve Meyer, our friend, our mutual friend, introduced me to you. And I was really thinking about like how important it is, being around you gave me confidence, and meeting Bruce, and I remember like Kong, or what was his last, Steve?
Klong, yeah,
Klong,
Steve Klong.
yeah. And because it's weird. It's like I feel like it hasn't been till like the last 5 years, 6 years where I actually feel confident about being an artist, and but that can certainly change tomorrow. I mean, I could put out a song and it just sucks. It's weird. It's sort of, it's just a strange. It's like you want to get good feedback, and I think it can be healthy, but I don't know. I guess it's confusing. I'm not really even asking a question, but I just have been really reflecting a lot about being in the studio with you. I remember also listening to A Rush of Blood to the Head from Coldplay. Like that was such a, I think, being in the studio, but having sort of like this milestone record come out at the same time it like inspired us. And the Smile just put out this record right now, and I'm just thinking how much different it is to have like this amazing record come out now compared to back then. There's a lot here that I'm sort of trying to vomit out, but I've just been really reflecting about creativity, being inspired, getting confident, and just sort of like it's the juxtaposition, or how different it was then as opposed to being now.
Right.
I know a lot there. It's just things I'm thinking about.
Yeah. Um, yeah, you talked about getting inspired, and yeah, remembering back to that time. I know that for me, during those days, I definitely had less responsibilities. I didn't have any children, and I was pursuing strongly at the time a career in music, recording music, making music. Although I realized back then that making a living was going to be easier for me from the recording music side of things, and providing that as a service to other people was a way to make money.
Yeah.
Um, and I found that I enjoyed, working on other people's music too, because I also was a bit insecure about my own artistry. And it was an easy way to defer that insecurity to work on somebody else's stuff, because that pressure wasn't there. So interestingly for me, I didn't put nearly as much pressure on myself as an artist or as a creator when I was working on other people's creations. I put pressure on myself for other things, like
Yeah.
to help it sound good and make comments about the arrangement that I thought would improve things, or, share a point of view on a part and whether it worked or whether it didn't, and that kind of thing. I felt more comfortable in those areas than like putting myself out there with my own song or, composition. Um, but that's actually, something that I struggle with even now, is like the notion of motivating myself or getting inspired enough to sit down and write something myself,
Yeah.
even though there's plenty of evidence that if I do that, like the results can be good. Like I've done that before and I've gotten paid to do it, or I've done it before and a organized area of contemporary music decides to program it into their concert and it gets like a bunch of performances by like a live ensemble. That doesn't happen to just anybody.
Yeah.
And every time I've done it, it seems to have good results, like I said, but it hasn't really changed the fact that it's like, should I really, is this like the best use of my time? Like I want to be creative, but is there a way for me to find that creative outlet by doing some other things? And I've recently found a creative outlet in learning to play the guitar, because it's something that I don't have to like worry about performing in front of somebody, because I'm like a beginner and I'm like not good and I couldn't do that anyway. So there's like a pattern that I'm finding within myself that I'm really trying to examine around what you said first, which was insecurity of, being an insecure artist or being insecure about your creativity. And what's funny is you could have evidence of good results and it doesn't seem to change that insecurity. I keep like kicking the ball down the road by saying, I'm going to learn how to play the guitar. I'm going to get good enough at it to where I can add that to my creative endeavors, because later in life, I'm going to create a bunch of stuff just for myself.
Yeah.
Like that, kicking the ball down the field a little bit. And I think I've had this conversation with you actually before, not too long ago, where it's like, I've got a lot of ideas, but do I really want to sit down and flush these out? Like, again, it's that conversation. Is this the best use of my time?
Well, you're bringing up something that I think about a lot. Well, I used to be all about this idea of inspiration. Like I've been very inspired the last few weeks playing the guitar, and I've come up with like 20 new sort of like demo ideas on my phone. But I was listening to another podcast where Sharon Van Etten, a singer-songwriter, was talking about this. The inspiration, actually, if we're lucky, is kind of the easy part. The hard part is taking these sort of ideas and sort of melodies and making it something, because it's something I can't speak for you, but it's exhausting to take these ideas and fine tune them and make the verse and the chorus.
Yeah. But what's interesting? It is, no question. Inspiration is the easier part. But if your results, like when you put it out, if you're finding that you're getting a good result, you're proud of yourself, you feel that sense of creative release, and you put something into the world, to your point, that's meaningful, that people are responding to, which I think is the best result you can get, is when other humans respond to your creativity. That sharing, it's just like sharing anything else. It feels really, really good, right? Mm-hmm. But then why do certain folks, myself included, choose to spend that same amount of time doing other things, which are also really hard? Like golf, for example. It's like, okay, I spend probably, I don't know, 4 hours a week, let's call it, 5 hours a week working on my golf game. I don't spend 4 or 5 hours a week like learning to play the guitar, even though I just told you my plan for later in life is to get decent enough at the guitar so that I can like make music compositions and play guitar on them and have guitar be a part of like my aesthetic and that whole thing, when I've been a keyboard my whole life.
Yeah.
I'm spending more time working on my golf game. I mean, it's close, like the number of hours, but still, it's more time on golf than that. And when I put it like that, I even question myself and go, why am I doing that when I get such a like rush and I get such a great feeling and such a sense of belonging and sharing with the world when I put out stuff that's creative that gets a response, that I've had evidence of over and over and over again? It's insecurity. Like for some reason, I am way more insecure still as an artist, as a piano player, as a musician, than golf. And golf is also hard. So what is it? Is it because I'll never be on the tour and I know that? Or is it because there's like some kind of failure thing in there?
Absolutely.
Is it because I didn't like make it, quote unquote, as a composer, producer, engineer? Like first you have to define what make it means. But let's face it, I have a day job and it's all consuming. It's a whole other career. And the only time I spend on music these days is learning to play the guitar, playing a handful of songs on piano. If I have a few ideas, putting them on the iPhone real quick, whatever, just so I don't forget them, write them down real quick, but not really doing anything with them. Like that's flip. That's like a complete inverse, 180 degrees from my previous career, which was all music all the time, no business. So
Hmm.
no day job. You know what I mean? None of that.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I think
Sure.
about that a lot too. I don't. Yeah, I even like these couple songs I've written the last couple days. I was even thinking like, gosh, Taylor Swift should be singing one of these songs, but it's sort of like, oh my God. I think it's just a lot of work to sort of get music, like the actual creation of the music and producing it and making it sound great is so much work. But I do believe that I know talented people, and I'm pretty good. I mean, I say that humbly. That I know that I can control the product, and it will sound good, and it'll have a vibe. But to sort of navigate the world of response and getting into this person's hand and getting it over to Taylor Swift and trying to get hired to write some songs with her. I mean, like that's a world that is so, I believe, but maybe I'm being too naive or insecure. Like I just feel like that world is so beyond my reach, that I don't even know where to begin. Just like the whole business side of music and art is something that always sort of overwhelms me, and scares me. And despite the fact that I think I write great songs, and if I was in like the right group of famous songwriters and musicians, I think it's something I'd be doing for a living full time. And I don't know if it's a shortcoming of mine, but I believe so much of making a living in art, there's, and I, for better or for worse, I really think so much of it is just like luck and timing. And not to say that luck and timing aren't involved in medicine or in law. You go to law school and get your law degree and go to medicine and get your degree in internal medicine or something. But there's something about the arts where it just feels more luck driven, precarious, and out of your control. And for me, I think that's makes me feel discouraged.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think, well, what I'll say, Eddie, what I respect about you is that despite all those things, you're still very prolific with your creativity. Um, and I think that's what you have to do as an artist. So, which is something I'm not doing, which I'm constantly thinking about
Hmm.
is, like, gosh, I'm spending all this time doing everything except being musically creative. That's like a broad stroke I took right there because, like I said, I do spend a few hours a week, you know, making, playing, mostly playing, learning when it comes to music. But, my day job, what I do for a living now, takes a lot out of me. I apply a lot of energy into that, and there's not a whole lot left in the tank after I'm done doing that. And I've compartmentalized the fact that this is what I'm going to be doing now to provide for my family, try to, catch up to my age when it comes to moving toward retirement, things like that, getting myself and my family into better financial positions, all that stuff as a commitment. And I'm happy about that. And I'm certainly using the creative bones that I have in my body in my day job. I do enjoy business. And I do enjoy the rush that I get from doing business. I like working with the people that I work with. I like negotiating. I like all those things. They give me a sense of fulfillment. Nothing quite like making music though, and being creative in that regard. But back to my point, which is, if you're an artist, I think I'm not all, but most of what you should be doing, in my humble opinion, and this is the advice I would give anyone who asks, is to spend as much time creating as possible, and don't worry about all that other stuff, marketing, having to be your own label or be your own business or having to get people to listen to it. Because if you're doing that, while you're creating, I think those two things can adversely affect each other personally. And I think it's best to be focused on creativity. Once that creativity is done, if you want to pour your time into becoming a business person and marketing your stuff, that's totally fair. And that's some people set out to do just that. Um, but I agree that it's a daunting task to do both because it's hard to do both. It's hard to be both. Um, but look, I'll use sports as an analogy. It seems like a lot of the really successful athletes are also really good business people. Like,
Hmm.
just for whatever reason, they seem to also excel in areas of business. So it makes me think, and the same holds true for some entertainers and musicians and things like that, where, and I don't know how they learned and went from point A to point B necessarily, but those two things seem to run in tandem with each other. And I think that's important to understand is that making a living at the arts uh, requires time being spent on business and marketing. It's just a requirement. And if an artist doesn't want to be doing that, that should be totally fair. But I think artists, and I'm guilty of the same thing or have been in the past, start to feel bad for themselves when they are not able to do that second piece that might help create more visibility and success on whatever they created. I think that there's a lot of pressure that artists put on themselves in that particular area. And I don't know if those two things are, I don't know if every artist out there has both of those things or is willing to do both of those things. And even if they do, will it equate to success? And but anyway,
Yeah.
back to, I'm losing my own
No,
point
but
that I'm trying to make. But
yeah.
back to what you were saying, which is it's really hard work to do that, no doubt. But folks who start their own businesses, like, I mean, I was in business for myself for a long time, and it was really, really hard. So I don't know that that's any harder or easier than creating something and then trying to have to sell it or any other product. I don't know that the arts are unique in that way. I think business is hard, and I think creating your own business is hard. And if you're in the business of creating your own product, whatever that is, intellectual, creative, or other, it's going to be hard to get that off the ground. I don't think music or entertainment is different in that regard. Do you have to be luckier? Man, I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. Well, I guess one point, and then I'll ask you one other question before we go. I was just thinking, it's like when the line ends for create, like sort of your example and the analogy that I talk about a lot is sort of creativity is a different animal than marketing. And I think the world that we live in now and the world you and I speak of is one effect of it is forcing more artists to do more of the marketing themselves. And I think for people that are photogenic, that like to be in front of the camera, that like attention, or are insecure and thrive on the dopamine of social media, I think that particular type of person can potentially thrive in this social media heavy world. Now, because it's almost like I think in their brain or their head, it's almost like creativity and marketing. It's just all sort of one thing. It's almost like feeding their ego and feeding their desperation for attention, all in sort of one pie. But then there's sort of the introverts, and I'll say insecure, but there's sort of a negativity around that. But I think insecurity is pretty normal with just anybody, but especially with creative people. What you're talking about, what I talk about, it's sort of asking that type of person who may have spent 3-4 years on a piece of work, art, song, album, then they're asked to put themselves out there and be on social media and release it. And it's a different part of their brain. But then, because people are so ADD now, like all that time, 6 months a year that you're spending on marketing, well, now you got to go back in and create a new piece of work or create a new record that could take a year or two it's I think it's creating a strange world where it's, I guess I'll talk about The Smile, like that new record that the members of Radiohead just put out. I think it's really, really darn good. I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm sort of like in that 8.59. And I haven't heard a record like that from beginning to end that's quote unquote inspired me for quite some time. Although I really liked the Ryan Adams record. I know you didn't like it as much as I, which is fine, but I guess I liked it because it inspired me to pick up the acoustic guitar. I think when we're dealing with the world that's so ADD and there's so much content, and then we're asking artists to also do marketing, I think it creates this sort of blurry world where, like, we don't even know where one line begins and where one line ends. We don't even recognize when something's really good. I think there's I don't know if I'm projecting, but the world that I see, it's moving so fast where, like, does anybody even appreciate what The Smile just put out? Does anybody even like take a moment to just sort of listen to it for a few weeks? Or are we sort of on to the next thing? Or we're asking artists to do their own marketing, but well, if you don't put out another thing, we're going to forget about you. So I think it's this strange, obviously something that I think about a lot, but it's sort of this strange intersection of a lot of confusion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I'll make the business analogy again, which is, well, it seems like the trend now in music, or it's been this way for a while, is, you know, artists need to do their own artist development, which was something that a few decades ago, there were folks out there whose sole purpose was to develop artists. And in large part, they were producers. And they were folks that like to get creative with people and help people realize their creative potential, fully knowing that the business side of it, they weren't going to be able to handle that. The artist wasn't going to be able to handle that. They were going to have to find some people with enough dollars and a business machine that was scalable, that could help the artist get the visibility that they needed. But it started with somebody believing in somebody else and helping them achieve their goals. In business, similar thing. Somebody like develops like a business idea of some kind, and they go looking for capital to help scale the business. And you know, there's venture capitalists out there, you know, that will provide seed funds to help get a business off the ground. But a lot of people that are creating these products, like they may have good business minds. They may not. They may not know anything about business. They may have to learn like as they go. But a lot of times they come in contact with people who are knowledgeable in the areas of scaling a business and making a product, if that's what you've developed, accessible to the masses, and to keep building up evidence and scaling up to a point where you can sell a lot of your products and have a business that goes into orbit and sort of kind of operates, you know, at scale or on its own. Well, nothing operates on its own, but it gets to that point where it's happening at scale and it seems to keep feeding itself. In music, it seems like in order for bigger money to get involved with intellectual property, you have to figure out how to do a lot of that yourself at first. And you have to get it kind of into orbit in a way yourself. And then folks that have more scalable business and scalable funds, they piggyback off of that foundation that the artists have created to scale it up bigger from that point forward. But it's not when it comes down to like the bare bones at the beginning, like, oh my gosh, here's this artist, they have like amazing songs, I have to help this person, like, you know, become known and amplify their work and get songs placed for them. Like that doesn't happen that often from my understanding, and probably a lot less than it used to. But I think that's one of the key differences. And maybe it's not just music, maybe it's all entertainment, where it's not so cut and dry, where, you know, somebody just comes and finds you and plucks you out of obscurity and then develops you into being successful. I think a lot of that has to happen at the individual basis. And then once you achieve success, folks, they come knocking and
Yeah.
they want to, they want to like be part of it, and they want to, maybe they have something to contribute at that point. Um, so I don't know how much of that change or how that is. Um, I don't know how much of that has to do with some of the other philosophical points you brought up about, the expectation. Uh, well, actually, I guess indirectly, it is an expectation. It is that the expectation of the artist is that they have to find their own way to a point, and then they can become more successful with help from outside parties to help scale them bigger instead of
Right.
it being a collective effort. So yeah, I guess the expectation is that if an artist really wants to achieve success, they have to think about building their own business with their own product. And building a business takes a lot of different types of people and a lot of different types of minds and a lot of different types of strategies, and it takes funds, it takes all those things. And how many people like have that? I don't
Yeah.
know. It's like that makes it really hard in of itself. It's with sports, it's like it's a little bit more cut and dry, because if you're it's pretty easy to prove if you're better than everybody on the
Mm.
field. But it's not so easy to prove if your song is better than everybody else's in the room. I'll just use that as a silly first come to mind analogy.
It's weird. Like, I think about, there was a piano in our house. I started playing the piano. I may have asked you this, 25 years ago. I don't remember. Um, I started playing the drums, you know, but it's weird. It's like you play music because it's an outlet or it's something you love to do, or I don't know. Music just had this sort of natural hypnotic effect on my body, my brain. It always was a great outlet. But then, like, do you remember when you were sort of like, I want to do this for a living? Was there something that sort of triggered that curiosity? Do you recall that? And then I remember you being from Chicago. Like, was the goal to, I'm going to LA to make a living doing this? Or do you remember that story?
Yeah, I do remember. I was making music on a workstation, keyboard, with a sequencer on it and a bunch of sounds. And I was sequencing my own stuff. And I just was doing it for fun, and I enjoyed it, and it inspired me, kept me busy. Um, and that was the only reason I was doing it. I wasn't thinking about doing it for a living or anything like that. In my first year of college, those sequences that I was making was getting some attention from my composition professor and some friends who I played it for. And, folks were, like you had said, they were giving me confidence and saying, oh, this is really good. You should think about doing more of this. And I was like, okay, and I would just do more of it. And then that summer, I think it was my sophomore year of college, my father suggested, because he knew an entertainment lawyer in Los Angeles, he suggested that for the summer, because I needed something to do for the summer, that I go out to Los Angeles and work with this entertainment lawyer on some more sequences. And he said he had access to a studio and he had access to an engineer. And those things had really limited meaning to me at the time, but it
Right.
sounded cool. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do that. And it was the first day in the studio with those folks, in the studio in North Hollywood, where I brought in my workstation that I had these sequences on, and the engineer like took that sequence and he taught me how to get that stuff out of the keyboard and onto an analog piece of tape. And he would record it, and he was like starting to like make it sound good. And in that moment, when I heard the stuff that I made on the sequencer come to life like that in the studio, like around all that equipment, that's when I was like, oh yeah, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to do for a living. And it's not really an accident that I ended up being a recording engineer. out of that and finding a living, because the one thing that being a recording engineer had in common with me having my compositions, find its way into the speakers and all that, was that I got to be in that environment by doing that. And it was in that environment where I had that realization that I wanted to make my living and spend all my time in that environment. Like at that point, I wanted to spend every single hour in the recording studio, every waking hour.
Yeah. It's, you were always, um, I guess my last point, I was just thinking, I think certain engineers and this, the guy that mastered or mixed my last record, and there is this sort of, gosh, I'm going to say the word nerd, and I don't mean that in any sort of negative way. I mean it in the sense that music has this sort of like fluidity to it, where it's sort of like it's very liquid. But ironically, music, there is this mathematical, and I think that's where I do rely on other people because I don't have it as much as I wish I did. There is sort of this like mathematical, systematic way that sounds work together. And I think you were always really good at that. Like not only mixing, but also like the keyboard and sequencing and MIDI. They're these sort of tools to music that I don't think just anybody like, I play the piano, I strum the guitar, and I've gotten better at learning and manipulating sounds, but that's kind of stuff always sort of came natural to you, and or at least it felt that way. And it isn't just like playing the guitar, playing the piano. It is sort of this very close examination of sort of like the chart of music that I think a lot of people can't do. And I think it does take a certain sort of brain to be good at. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I mean, the irony though is that like math was something I was basically a failure at
Huh.
academically, and music theory, which are the tools you're given, you know, when you're learning to be a composer and studying music composition, contemporary music composition, you're exposed to music theory and learning how music works from a formal perspective. I found to be like not interesting at
Huh.
all, and
Interesting.
boring
I
and
never would have
boring.
thought that.
Yeah, I didn't really find, and I didn't do particularly well in my theory classes, but I was a good composer, and that's how I made my way through college with a degree in composition. And how I was able to achieve that was by, at the end of the day, writing good compositions. And of course, I used some of the theoretical things that I learned in college, but it wasn't like I was in there like loving it, loving learning it. In fact, I had people like telling me, well, you should learn this stuff and then forget it because it could actually ruin your creativity. Now, I don't know that, again, that's painting with a broad brush. And I don't know that I would say that that ruins your creativity. I think you need to compartmentalize it for what it is and realize that music theory is a tool, just like math is a tool for engineers. And you still need to be creative, and you still need to come up with things that are inspiring that other people want to pay attention to. Like if you play me this really theoretically advanced piece of music, there's a really good chance that it's not going to sound like music at all, and it could be like one of these weird pieces you hear in academia. One professor I had when I was doing my graduate degree called it boink music, because it's like there's no melody, there's nothing to latch on to. But if you look at it from a theoretical standpoint, you could find some things that are kind of advanced, kind of maybe even groundbreaking. But if you play the piece of music for somebody, like they very likely may not respond to it,
Yeah.
or they might not have an emotional reaction to it. Maybe that's not the point. I don't know. But the point is that I'm making is that those things are tools. And I think it's important to use those tools to make or to create things, of course, and to defer to them, because if you're struggling, they can actually help a lot. But relying on them exclusively to make good music, since that's what we're talking about, I don't know if those two things are, I don't know how reliant they are on each other. I guess to be like it's a language. So I guess to speak language well, you have to know a lot about language. So to perform or to compose music well, you need to know a few things about music for sure, and how you learn them, I think, can be really variable. Um, but yeah, I was good at those things musically, like in terms of um, being able to execute, I suppose, on them. But I can't say that learning them formally was interesting to me. It really wasn't.
Yeah. Well, this was good, man. I appreciate you making some time and talking, and these are areas that I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about, and yeah, I think hopefully you'll get to a place where you get to start putting some of these ideas beyond just like on the phone, and maybe make one of them a little bit bigger than just being a voice memo.
Yeah, I'd love to flush out some recordings again one day.
Yeah,
Um, but it's for this point in my life right now, it's not
golf.
the priority, and that's what's that?
Right now it's golf.
So yeah, I mean, it's golf. I mean, I have so many hobbies. It's like golf is a hobby for sure. Maintaining an aquarium reef tank, which was a hobby I used to do as a
Oh
teenager,
yeah.
but I didn't. I stopped doing it for years, and then it became a pandemic hobby, so to speak. And now I'm back into it. I spend a fair amount of time, you know, disconnecting from work, from the day job, and um, spending time doing that. It's tough. Like I said, it's tough to find the energy when you put so much of yourself into something
Hmm.
for so long every day. It's not so easy to find the energy to do more than that. So whatever can give yourself, whatever can give people a relief from the normal day to day, I think is going to have the desired therapeutic effects. So um, I think for me to feel free enough to sit down and work on music, like flush stuff out, compose full on pieces, make an album. It's all stuff I really want to do, but I think I'm going to have to be past the day job in order for that to be possible for me,
Yeah.
which means I will have to make a decision to not have a day job in order to do that. And I think to make that decision, given the choices that I've made, it's just going to happen later in life. It's pretty much as simple as that. But I think what I'm proud of myself about is that I've become, at least I think on the surface, okay with that, which has been really important for my health, mentally
Definitely.
and physically.
Well, it was good to see you. I'll send you these photos.
Please do, man.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, yeah. I hope this is productive. I hope your listeners take interest in it, and um, some tough topics though to talk about, man.
I
I
know.
mean, it's tough to find the words and the thoughts around them because they're deep subjects, and not easy to rationalize or to make sense of.
Yeah, I don't know if it's unhealthy or I certainly don't, because I talk about it on my podcast, one could think as they listen, oh, God, Eddie, it's like fucking exhausting thinking about these things. And I don't think about them that often, but I certainly contemplate the world and sort of my place in the world and finding joy and meaning and making the most of my limited time here. And then yeah, just releasing art into this dizzy world is I find it confusing and complicated, and it's just things that I think a lot about. It's what does it take to get somebody to care? I think about that too. It's sort of like when does somebody care about a product, something? Is it's yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough one too, man. But the outlet that you have in creating stuff and the feeling you get from completion, like I remember what that feels like. Um, it's cathartic. Like that's the perfect description for it, I think. And
Yeah.
that catharsis is really healthy. It's really therapeutic. It's fulfilling. It's cathartic. I think that's really important. The validation piece, not so easy. I'm not sure in the end how powerful certain types of validation are or are not, but I do know, for at least for myself, it's really powerful when you learn that just one person was moved by something you've done or created or put out in the world. I think is a really great feeling because that's you've obviously done something for another person. I think that's what it comes down to, and that's really powerful. And I'm
Yeah.
sure you get that from teaching. You know, you taught yoga,
Oh
so
yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
it's like that's
yeah.
got to be. You must feel fulfilled when you do that. See people's bodies change, see their psychology change.
Yeah, I get a lot of joy from all of these things, you know. Yeah, I used to, yeah, I just used to be riddled with insecurity, which is just such a, like, when I think back, it's like, fuck, what a waste of energy, you know? I mean, it's like, I used to think, oh, an artist can only do one thing, you know? You're a singer-songwriter and that's it. You know, a true artist is only doing, you know, passionate about one thing. And it's just, I don't know, it's just such a buzzkill. It's so myopic to look at, you know, art that way. And so I just, it's like, I've got lots of things I want to try and explore and express. And yeah, even, you know, DJing at 2 o'clock in the morning to a room was like that was, I never thought I would be a DJ. I almost looked down upon DJs like it was an art form. And then I just like 10 years ago, I was sort of, I went to a set, forgot her name, but the way she was manipulating the music on stage, it just like it blew me away. I was like, oh, this is a whole other art form that I was pointing my nose up at. I was just like, God, how ignorant of me. It's just, yeah, it's just so. I just think that you just art expression is just fluid and just find a way to express yourself.
Yep,
So yeah,
cool, man.
cool, dude. Well, as always, it's great to see you and reflect and talk about all this stuff. I appreciate you making the time.
Thanks, man. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, next time I see you, hopefully it'll be on the golf course.
Let me know, man. I'm always down to play golf.
Done. When do you can you play like during the week or does it have to be a weekend thing?
I would have to take the day off of work to be able to play during the week because unless it was up here, like
Okay.
I could meet somewhere up in this area
Like at
for
4?
sure during the week.
Could you
Yeah,
meet?
I could go. I could skip out early and probably get somewhere by 4:30.
Okay.
And most twilight up here starts at 4, so that's a good time for me up here. But if we were to go somewhere else, it would have to be on a weekend.
Okay. Well, I would probably meet you then at like 4:30. That's what we would do.
Okay,
Cool.
great.
Yeah.
Be totally down.
Done. Cool. Well, you'll be hearing from me.
Okay, man.
Have a good rest of your Sunday and appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon.
You too, Eddie.
Thanks.
Thanks, man.
Bye.
Did you want me? Come out and visit me today. I wanna go all the way. I wanna go all the way with you. I wanna go all the way. I wanna go all the way with you. Lean in and kiss me again. Feels like the very first time we made love, like pigeons learn to sing. Be strong, just fake them again. Let's make them believe you're with me. What I feel is wrong. Maybe you're